Hey there guys and girls, Quode here with another quotable session. I know it's been a while, so let's just jump right into it. Today, I want to talk about progression-based equipment, abilities, and loadouts in FPS games. As we enter the year 2019, the idea of grinding and progressing in shooters is no longer associated purely with skill and map knowledge, but rather items and upgrades. I've spoken about this in the past on stream about my distaste for hero abilities, operator moves, specialist powers, however the hell you want to label those, you know, as far as them being a part of a shooter. This topic is more of a fundamental base for that distaste, and I hope that after the video you'll understand my mindset. Recently while streaming, I had a person in chat ask me how I'd feel if certain guns labeled as quote-unquote OP in Sandstorm were unlocked after some form of progression. After realizing this was a legit question, I knew I had to make a video about the topic further to, go further in depth, because as I recall, I don't think any mainstream content creator has made a video talking about this trend. And it needs to be addressed. In any shooter, but especially ones that boast a competitive game type, progression-based unlocks are nothing more than a grind mechanic that's meant to give the illusion of having good game content and a high skill ceiling without actually providing either. Whereas in MOBAs or RTSs, where every matchup of competitive play is based around progression, the strategic timing of that progression to unlock ultimate special abilities and other buffs. But first-person shooters, the progression's not that. It's deceptively long. It takes many matches, many hours of gameplay to unlock. And if you don't want to do that, the only alternative is to straight up invest cash into the game. This doesn't make players improve their skill at all. It makes them learn bad angles, lanes, and routes because they're playing with weaker weapons or buff limitations or bad abilities. In fact, I think it only increases the likelihood of a player forking over extra dollars to the developer, that way they can get to the good gear quicker. Now, I'm not saying that good players aren't going to do well with low tier gear, but I will say that no quality shooter rewards lower IQ and lower reacting players with better in-game items just because they've invested more money. If you want to show off that your game has a level of skill required behind its gameplay, prove it by letting players have full access to the game's content and weapons after they've already dumped at least $50 into the game. Taking a look at games like Call of Duty and Rainbow Six Siege, you pay $60 on release for a multiplayer-only PvP shooter, and yet in both games, if you don't want to have to spend any money past that $60, you have to grind a considerable number of hours dealing with shit weapons or shit operators or a combination of the two, just so that you can get to the unlock to start using the real weapons and operators. This is asinine, and it is so backwards, but what makes it worse for me is the fact that young gamers of today, and the older gamers actually, now that I think about it, are so used to seeing this implementation that they just kind of roll their eyes, buy the game, and play for maybe 40, 60, 80 hours if you're lucky, and then drop the game because the gameplay ends up being like really boring and not worth the time sink to get better. And honestly, game developers love this because they already got your money. They really don't care what kind of enjoyment you get out of the game. The moment you put more than 2 hours into the title that you purchased, you're not going to get a refund on it. So the fact that you get bored of the game before reaching max rank means nothing because they already got your money, your neighbor's money, the extra money from the high spenders who enjoy that simulated form of competition where they're just having like a carousel of FPS orgies because they just run solo into lobbies that have top gear in a game where nobody else does, and they're just having a ball. So this all creates this weird positive content vibe around the game because people believe that they're quote-unquote progressing in these games, but they're not actually improving in terms of mechanical skill or in-game knowledge. If you take a look at the most successful, and I do mean the most successful FPS esport, aka Counter-Strike, there's literally no progression system. Everybody starts with the same weapons, with the same stats, and the same economy bonuses every single match. You do get more money for performing, well individually each round, but everybody is limited to the same number of primaries, pistols, grenades, regardless of how much extra in-game economy you have. And then if you look at Sandstorm, Sandstorm simplifies it even further by just giving everybody every gun. Yes, you're limited by supply points, so you can't, fully kit out your gun and have armor and have chest carriers and have extra grenades, but the point is, it's all unlocked there for you. You choose where the points go. So going back to earlier where I was mentioning the mechanical skill and in-game knowledge, Counter-Strike, you struggle with learning the movement, the strafing, and the spread of the rifles. In Sandstorm, you struggle with managing the recoil, the suppression effects, and openness of the maps. Neither game has any sort of progression system that forces you to play shitty low-tier lobbies until you unlock those good specialist abilities, you know, or force you to pay $20 in order to unlock that game-changing equipment. In my opinion, that kind of shit belongs in MMOs or single-player games. It doesn't belong in FPSs at all, especially when you're trying to showcase the most talented players in the world. Now, I don't have any solution for the argument of, what about the casual audience? People always say, well, without progression system, how do casual players who don't play competitive feel rewarded enough in the game to retain their interest? And maybe even further off of that, get into competitive. In my personal opinion, it's hard to care. Casual gamers will throw their money whenever they feel like it. So maybe you should just create a MMO that's a first-person shooter kind of thing. I guess they already did that with Destiny, you know. They made a lot of money. You could take a casual's money that way, but Destiny doesn't proclaim to be a competitive shooter. If your game is a competitive game with some depth and skill required, all of your content should be unlocked for everybody with the main purchase. You buy the game to get the content. Don't dress up a turd, top it with some ice cream, and call it a brownie. I mean, you can do that, but just know that people are going to call you up for your shit, and I hope that in the future, gamers will hold developers to a higher standard when it comes to shooters in general. So that's just something I wanted to ramble about. That felt pretty good. It's been a while since I've just kind of let off and talked about something that I don't like. And I think that, and it's not that I'm doing it for any selfish reasons, I just feel like somebody needs to talk about it. Because if we don't, you're just going to keep getting more Sieges, more Overwatches, more Call of Duties. Think about this. Counter-Strike came out in 2012. 2012. Sandstorm has released in, well, basically 2019. December 2018. It's basically 7 years in between the two, right? Despite that 7-year gap, with the exception of these two shooters, I cannot think of a single shooter that hasn't had some sort of money-hungry progression scheme built into its foundation. Looking right at you, EA, fucking ruining Battlefield and Battlefront and whatever else you people have touched. Anyways, if you're watching it in the future, I do stream every day of the week except for Sunday, usually, so make sure you follow me on Twitter and come by the streams on Twitch. Until then, make sure you rest well, recharge, and enjoy peace of mind. The Lord blesseth. Thanks.